Hello, Gen Genies. It's me, Julie.
And Rich.
Before we get started today, we want to let you in on some exciting news. We have launched our new Patreon page for the podcast.
Woohoo! We are super excited about this new chapter for CutOff Jeans.
So, Patreon is a website where listeners like you can pledge a small monthly amount. We're talking only $5 or $10, guys, to support the podcast and help defray the costs of bringing you the show each week.
To be clear, CutOff Jeans will continue to be absolutely free. But to thank you for your support, we are going to offer our patrons some fun little extras.
Like early access to the podcast every week, where you'll get to hear the latest episode before it's released to the general public.
And why not make your friends jealous with exclusive patron-only CutOff Jeans swag?
Fancy. And here's something you guys have been asking for, and I'm really looking forward to this. I'm going to host a monthly, hour-long, online Ask Me Anything session where patrons at the $10 level can literally ask me anything.
Anything? You're a brave woman, Julie.
You know, I know. I'm also going to give access to my blog, Are You My Father?, where I tell the story of my search, actually it's my life story basically, for my biological father in even more detail than I did on the podcast.
Wow, your blog was the original inspiration for CutOff Jeans, wasn't it?
It was.
Wow. Well, all patrons at any level will receive a shout out on the podcast along with our undying gratitude for your support.
Yep. You guys know that this show is a labor of love for me. It's something I'm very passionate about. It'd mean so much to me if you would consider supporting our work here on the podcast by going to patreon.com/CutOff Jeans podcast.
That's Patreon, patreon.com/CutOff Jeans podcast.
We'll add a link to it on the podcast and on the Facebook page. Thank you all, my Gen Genies.
And now, on with the show.
Woohoo!
Is your family tree a mystery? Are you fascinated by genealogy? Well, hip hip hooray, let's talk DNA with Julie.
The truth is in your genes.
In CutOff Jeans.
Welcome to CutOff Jeans, the podcast that helps you find your truth using nothing but DNA. I'm Julie Dixon Jackson, and I'm a genetic genealogist, henceforth known as a Gen Genie.
And I am Richard Castle, the co-host and producer of this podcast. What's going on, Julie?
All sorts of things.
Yeah, like what?
First of all, I have to apologize to Bonnie Wade Musia, who is a listener, the one who I've been speaking with lately that helped me, got me that job actually with the PCRB, that we met up in Salt Lake.
Oh.
At Roots Tech. And there was I posted a couple pictures. This was one of her dressed as a pilgrim, which was adorable. But I got to hang out with them, with her and her friend Jennifer Steinhardt Baker, who is also a listener. So thanks, guys. It was really fun meeting you.
Well, I understand it. We talked about so much about Roots Tech last week, and there was all that beach ball talk to get out.
Very important.
Hey, guess what, Julie?
What?
I don't want to brag or anything, but
boy.
you know, when I'm not on this podcast, I'm writing songs and theater and all that stuff.
I do know. Do tell.
Yeah,
What do you have?
one of my songs it was a semi-finalist in the International Songwriting Competition. I couldn't believe it.
Was it a specific category?
Yes, it was under the comedy/novelty category. I mean, specifically, I entered it into that category because I knew I didn't have a snowball's chance in hell in any like pop or rock or rap or anything like that. So
what if you wrote a rap song?
I did write a rap song.
Of course you did.
But I just don't think it's still a character song, and there's no way it would ever get,
we call them patter songs
yes,
in theater.
Exactly. So my song, Mr. Whiskers, that I wrote, there's a video of it online. It got it to the semifinals.
Yay!
So I was really happy.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
I love singing your song.
Oh, I was in need of some good news, and so when that came in, I had to read it twice and was like, oh my gosh, I'm actually not getting rejected for something.
Nice.
Yeah, they even gave me a little logo that I could put on social media to say that I was a semifinalist. So I was like, oh, that's exciting.
That's nice.
It's like sort of my little badge of honor.
Yeah. We didn't talk about, remember we had a contest to name your new plant?
Yes, I loved it. First of all, it was a very nice picture you took of my lovely plant.
Thanks, I feel good about it.
And I was amazed at all of the great responses on Facebook of the people. We asked everybody to kind of chime in and give us ideas to what to name the plant because I don't usually name my plants.
Oh, I do.
Yes.
And now you have to because
I think I had a lot of favorites.
Okay.
One of the ones I really loved because of course I love musical theater was Audrey 3 because Audrey 2 is the famous man-eating plant.
It's a play on Little Shop, guys.
Little Shop of Horrors.
Yes.
However, I'm also kind of afraid of man-eating plants, and every time I'm like sitting at a restaurant and there's like a plant next to me, and and the tendril is like touching me or something, I get really freaked out. Like it's reaching. I know it's reaching for the sun or whatever, and maybe I'm giving off some kind of light, but I'm always afraid it's going to attack me. So I am not going to name it Audrey 3. So my favorite, my two favorites were Dina because like DNA.
I enjoyed that.
And I also liked Barbara Streisand.
Okay, I can't remember who suggested that, but I laughed out loud.
Oh yeah, it's great.
That was a guffaw.
It's great,
everybody.
So I decided to that we would combine my two favorites.
Yes.
And we are going to name my plant Dina Streisand.
Barbara's less famous sister.
The one that can't sing. Oh, wait, that's Rosalind.
No, Rosalind can sing.
Oh, she can. All right.
Rosalind has a beautiful voice, actually.
All right.
Have you not heard Rosalind Kind sing?
I was just being catty.
All right, fine.
Of course I've heard her sing.
Of all the people, you have to have heard Rosalind Kind
But
sing.
Dina Streisand sings her own tune, Somewhere That's Green.
Yes.
So thank you all for
I want to get googly eyes for her.
contributing. Yes, why not? For contributing the names and coming up with some great ideas.
That was really fun. I had no idea you guys liked
contests.
I couldn't think of the word contest. Polls. There you go.
Contest polls, but it was really fun. So Dina Streisand has a nice special place on my desk here.
Yeah, and I'm going to put some googly eyes on her, and perhaps she will get her own Instagram page.
Maybe we could get a little tiny microphone and put it in front of her and take a picture.
I love it. All right, so let me see. Oh, I have corrections.
Okay.
Corrections corner, or not really corrections, but just clarifications. I love a clarification.
Mm-hmm.
Remember how we were talking about Medical Center a couple weeks ago?
Yes, the TV show from the 70s.
Yes, and you said you thought that Chad Everett was in it.
Did I? Okay.
You're correct.
Oh, and I think I mentioned this in the podcast. I have never seen one episode of that show.
I don't think you've ever been wrong, frankly, about any of these people and things.
I'm wondering how I know about it if I haven't seen it.
Why do we not have a trivia team?
Right? Because the trivia...
We need a sports person.
We need a sports person, and they don't go back far enough for me. Like, if somebody asked something within the last 20 years, I couldn't tell it.
I could do that, though. So
I have to go way back. I got to go back to the 70s,
Okay, fine. All right. Well, I'm going to tell you a story about Medical Center. I'm not going to tell you a story. I'm just going to tell you about it.
Right.
So it aired from 1969 to 1976. 7 years.
Wow.
It has 171 one-hour episodes. Why have we never seen one? On CBS in color. It actually says in color.
Wow.
Created by Frank Glicksman and Al C. Ward. Produced by MGM. Filmed at, where do you think it was filmed at?
I have no idea.
Cal State Northridge.
Really?
Yes.
That's an odd place to film that.
Well,
Was there a
hospital university
there?
setting. It looks like a hospital.
I can't believe it was on for 7 years. Uh-huh. See, I would never have watched it, and but somehow, it must have come up in something when I was watching another show.
And you may have watched it because remember when we were kids, we didn't have options, and so maybe when there was nothing else to do, it was just on.
Yeah.
And you just colored while it was on.
No one in my house watched those kinds of things. Like I know about Marcus Welby and all that, but I never watched it, and I just know it from people talking, probably from like Merv Griffin or Dinah Shore or some TV show I watched where they interviewed, Chad Everett, and he talked about being on Medical Center.
Oh, Chad.
That's the only way I would know.
Okay, fine.
But it's in my head, and it's there to stay.
Right.
How
did the subject of Bedlam come up? I was talking about the bodies buried under London.
Yes, and you didn't know that Bedlam was
that asylum.
Yes.
So I, of course, had to do a deep dive.
Of course you did.
So it was originally, Bedlam was the nickname. It was actually called Bedlam Royal Hospital, like Bethlehem. Was the first asylum for the mentally ill in England. It's currently located in Beckenham, Kent. It's still there. The word Bedlam came to be used generically for all psychiatric hospitals and sometimes is used colloquially for an uproar.
Yes.
In 1247, the asylum was founded at Bishopsgate, just outside the London Wall, by Simon Fitzmary. It's a nutty name. Former Sheriff of London. It was then known as the Priory of St. Mary of Bethlehem, from which sprang the variant spellings, Bedlam and Bethlem. Bedlam was mentioned as a hospital in 1329, and some permanent patients were accommodated there by 1403, blah, blah, blah. Ooh, I was going to stop, but I just saw something. In 1547, it was granted by Henry VIII to the city of London as a hospital for the mentally ill. It subsequently became infamous for the brutal ill treatment meted out to its patients.
Meted out.
Thank you. There's more, but I won't bore you.
Well, it's sort of like the only reason I know about Bellevue. Bellevue is another famous mental hospital because I remember watching a rerun of The Honeymooners.
Oh.
Yeah, and someone said something to Ralph Cramden, the great Jackie Gleason, and he says, "And you're going to Bellevue because you're driving me crazy."
And you had to get out. The encyclopedia.
Probably.
To say
I don't know how I knew, but I knew that Bellevue.
I did too. Was a mental hospital. I knew
hospital.
that too, but how did I know?
Maybe because he defined it by the way he was saying it. That you knew that he didn't just say you're going to Bellevue.
I think it was a series of different pieces of information that kind of like I would see on the news, and so and so lost their mind and was sent to Bellevue.
Right. But I don't know that I ever knew that it was a real.
A real place?
Yes. Yeah. So
I don't
there
know
you
that
go.
I did either.
I learned a lot from television. I often wonder what I would know if television had never been invented. Probably not much.
We would just be blobs.
I would be either in Bedlam or Bellevue.
Oh, this is a message from a listener, John Bardeleben. You can correct me, John. That'll be a second corrections corner. Hi, Julie. I thought I would message you instead of posting this on the main board. You and Rich were talking about transcriptions on the census records, and I thought I could elaborate on the process. I was a volunteer on the 1940 transcriptions for family research, which is what Ancestry is using. There was a method that we could flag anything that was illegible. I'm having trouble talking today. Plenty of that, sadly. Since we could select states and areas to transcribe, I concentrated on areas of Alabama where at least some of the names might be familiar. One trick I used to try and get the names right if I got stuck was to look at Find a Grave or the 1930 census for the same family. Hopefully it will get easier in the future.
Oh, that's interesting.
Thanks, John.
Somebody with first-hand knowledge of it. Thank you.
First-hand knowledge.
Even if we messed up your name, John, we're glad we...
Bardeleben.
Yeah, there you go. Well, either way, thank you. That's very interesting.
Thanks, John.
Yes.
That was very interesting. I'm loving the census. The more I do this, the more I appreciate the census because I can find so many little tidbits that are like little Easter eggs in the census records.
And now it's after how many years do they release the census?
73. So the 1940 census will be released in 2023.
I wonder how they came up with 73.
Because that was the average lifespan back then when they decided to do that. And so they figured everybody would be gone after 73 years.
Lovely.
The census is coming up this year, and I've seen some commercials about it.
It should be really interesting if people are going to go door to door with what's going on with the coronavirus right now.
Oh, interesting. A lot of it is online. I think they are having people go door to door if they want, but a lot of it you can just go online and do it.
I always wonder, how do they keep track of who's filled it out from online, whose door have they gone to, who have they stopped on the street and asked, because
I don't think they can stop anyone on the street.
Well, I mean, they're trying
to
do a homeless count, right? Don't they do that as well?
I don't know.
I thought it was to count every person living in the country.
It is. So that is interesting about the homeless. I have a friend, Amy, who works for the Los Angeles Housing Commission specifically for housing homeless. And they do every month or 6 weeks, they actually go out and do a physical homeless count.
Right. And I'm sure it's getting bigger and bigger because I can see it just driving around or walking around,
Yeah.
So, wow.
It is.
But I'm sure there's got to be a way for them to count them on the census as well. I mean, there has to be, right?
Sure. Yeah.
I mean, they probably even go to nursing homes, and they're trying to count everybody is the goal.
That is the goal.
Yeah.
Okay, I have a story from the trenches.
Story from the trenches.
From the trenches. Okay, so my client that I've spoken about for a while, that I found her biological father and who had 3 daughters and a son. The son thought that DNA was a sham because even though he's a cop, and
I remember
2 of the daughters turned out to be MPEs, and they are not his daughter. So she hadn't met him yet. She had met her mother, who told her the story. She hadn't met him, and the siblings are very protective of him, understandably. But they've been meeting with her and talking to her, and so I think they finally got comfortable enough to let her meet her father.
Okay.
Which is interesting. And I'm going to tell you, what did she write to me? So the father has dementia, which is one of the reasons why they're so protective of him. They don't know what he remembers, what he doesn't. But she met him, and he remembered her mother and said he'd always wondered about her. And he got to the point where he said he used to wait outside her house to see if he could get a glimpse of her, which was interesting. And he also asked her to call her right then and there.
Yeah, I wonder, is that a sweet story or is that a stalker story? Depending on who's telling it.
Yeah. Well, she said he's very, very sweet.
Okay, good.
And what I think is that she sent me a picture that I posted in private places because I actually don't have permission to post a picture of him, and I'm sure they won't give me permission.
Okay.
The family. But she looks exactly like him, way more than the other kids do. Well, 2 of the daughters obviously aren't his daughter. But, but she also said... She said, they're very secretive. When they picked me up at the hotel to bring me to the brother's house, I brought a pillowcase and put it over my head so I couldn't see where they were taking me.
What?
She was joking. She was making a joke, but they didn't think it was funny either.
Well, I for a minute I thought you were serious, and I was like, wait a minute.
No, she did it.
I get it. All
yes,
right.
But
or that they had asked her to cover her head so they couldn't see.
Yeah, no, but maybe that crossed their mind, and that's why they didn't think it was funny when she did it instinctually. I don't know. I've spoken to one of the daughters who's an MPE, actually. She's very nice, taking this very slow, and eventually, she might have me help her and her sister, but, this is a lot to digest right now.
Sure, yeah.
So I'm really glad that she's met both of her parents now, and, yeah. So that's my From the Trenches story for this week.
I always love your From the Trenches, Julie.
I like being in the trenches. That's where it all happens, man.
I know.
Okay.
Shall we take a break?
I think we shall.
If you're enjoying our podcast, please subscribe, rate, and review. Or consider supporting us on our Patreon page, patreon.com/CutOff Jeans Podcast. Now back to Julie and me.
Okay, we're back.
Hello.
Hello. I saw a story, I think it was on CBS News, one of the morning shows, about a father from South Carolina who had to fight to win custody of his own daughter who was given up for adoption without his knowledge.
Oh, my gosh.
And, when you think about it, that happened a lot in the past. I'm sure my father didn't know about me.
Right. I guess you always assume that the father either didn't know about it or didn't want to know about it.
Exactly.
Right? But that's sort of...
But you don't, but they're
but
not
you don't
even,
know.
Yes.
There might be situations...
Right.
Well, of course there are situations.
Right. And there were a lot of people like, well, how if he didn't know about it, but he did know about it. Mm-hmm. So she gave birth without his knowledge and sent a photo of her baby bump a week after the birth. So they were dating... and he was excited about this baby, but I guess apparently her parents didn't like him because he didn't have a job. He was also black, so
and
I don't know
she
if
was
that
not.
And she was not.
Okay.
So she'd been planning the relinquishment all along.
And what year are we talking about?
Oh, like in the last couple of years.
Oh,
this baby's a toddler.
And people were upset about the mixed race recently.
Okay, listen to this.
I thought this was back in the 60s.
It is South Carolina.
Oh, I'll say no more.
Okay. So South Carolina is one of the 25 states that has a responsible father registry, which is where unwed, I'm doing air quotes, dads can be notified if their child is put up for adoption. Problem is, nobody knows about that law except for lawyers who use it to their advantage. They just, make sure that nobody knows about it, basically. So in this case, the father's sister thought the bio mother was behaving strangely. And so she researched and told him about the registry. So he actually went and registered because his sister told him to.
Wow.
About a week later, he gets some papers at his house saying that his child had been born a week earlier and was given to an adoptive family in another state. And he freaked out. So if he hadn't registered, he wouldn't have known. Because in South Carolina, there's the ancient law that states that hard-to-place children can be adopted across state lines. This is one of those old, blue laws that don't make sense anymore.
But what does that mean, hard to place?
It means, and here's what are hard-to-place children. Kids that are 6 or older, kids with physical or emotional disabilities, and kids that were mixed race.
Oh wow.
They're considered hard to place.
Really?
And that hasn't been changed. And so that was a loophole that they were able to use.
Oh my God.
Isn't that shocking?
It is shocking because it's today. I could see how that might have been in place in
the
years
50s,
past.
yeah.
But today that you would say mixed race, and I don't know the
Well-
figures. Maybe it's true. Maybe people are less likely because they want to have a baby that looks like
especially in
them.
the South. And it's still here, Rich. If there's one thing we've learned,
Yeah.
is that it's quite prevalent, and that this is still a very racist country.
It is, but then, I have a cousin who adopted Chinese girls, so obviously my cousin is Caucasian.
Right.
So it's clear that she has adopted children, and I don't see what the difference is between that and having a child of mixed race.
Yeah, I don't know. It's just, I think that was just a loophole that the lawyer was able to take advantage of.
Right.
Even though it's not relevant anymore.
So how do you feel about this? I'll tell you now,
All right.
This is interesting that it brings up because I feel like if a woman is pregnant, it is, to me, her choice whether she has the baby or not. But as far as the baby, giving the baby up for adoption, I feel like that's something where she should have to tell the father, and the father should have something to say of that.
I agree.
And others might argue the father should have something to say about whether a baby is carried to term or not.
Yeah.
But I say it still rests with the woman because it's her body.
Yes.
But once that baby is out of her body, then I think it's both of their baby.
Agreed. Well, and we shouldn't get into this debate.
No, but I'm bringing it up.
I think we're on the same page
Yeah.
about it. And I think that,
there's always
people have
extenuating
different
circumstances.
and people have different belief systems about when is a baby and when is a human a blah, blah, blah.
Right.
Which is nothing that we should talk about because
No,
that's not what this is
no.
about. But I will agree with you. And I think that basically a woman's body a woman and her body have.
Right, but once the baby is delivered and born,
Yes, then everybody has equal rights.
and then the baby has its own rights, right? Like you
Absolutely.
said, it
Absolutely.
should have its own birth certificate. It should know who its parents are.
Yep.
The baby has the rights, and so I believe that baby now is no longer
Right.
of this woman,
And yes.
alone, and that
Right.
the father should have been notified. Maybe
Absolutely.
he wanted to raise the baby
He
even
did.
without her, right?
Well, he did.
So there you go.
No, he did. And in fact, that's what happened. So when the adoptive parents were told that he was the adoptive parents were told that he was out of the picture,
Yes.
which is what they're usually told.
Right.
And when they found out, they wrote him a letter begging him to let them keep his daughter. It had only been a couple weeks.
Oh, it's hard. It's terrible. I
know.
mean, I can't imagine that how fraught that had to have been.
Right. But
for those adoptive parents who
absolutely. And I will tell you that has happened to several friends of mine. Because now, especially in LA, the adoption system is foster to adopt. So almost always you're a foster parent first in the hopes, because the state and the social workers and the lawyer, the baby has their own lawyer. The goal is to reunify a family.
Yeah.
And so, and a lot of the times a mother is in prison or,
Right.
but so they have to keep that is paramount to them, is keeping a family together. But if it's going to be a good environment for the child.
Right.
So I have several friends who have adopted that lost their first couple of kids.
After they had already been legally adopted.
No. They'd not been legally adopted.
They were in foster. Okay, but they wanted to adopt them,
Yes.
and they couldn't.
Yes.
Ugh.
Yes. It happens a lot. But again, you have to think about the rights of the child in this case. And you go into it as a foster parent knowing that this is a possibility. And it's heart-wrenching.
Yeah.
Or heartbreaking.
Both.
Yes.
Both.
You wrench and then break it.
I think this is, again, I'm trying to relate. I don't have children, but I adopted my dog, and I love that little, I love that little dog, even though he doesn't always love me.
Or me.
No, he doesn't love you.
He definitely doesn't love me.
But if I've often thought of that. Like, I'm walking the dog. What if somebody saw him and went, "Oh my God, that was my dog," and he ran away. And you think about that when you've got this precious thing that you love so much. You're like, "Oh no, that would break my heart." On both sides. Like, "Oh my God, if Buddy ever ran away and someone else adopted him, I would want him back."
Of course.
So there's no easy answers here, and I'm sorry you brought it up.
Oh, God.
Because now I'm upset.
Well, this just took a turn, didn't it? Anyway.
No, it's disturbing. It's very upsetting, to think that someone could love a child, and bring them into their home and love that child and then be told, "I'm sorry, you can't keep the child."
Right. But that's why I think it's also the responsibility of everybody to be on the same page.
Yes.
And if you're an adoptive parent, you need to know about. My friend who just adopted her son knows who both of the parents are, knows where they are, knows what their story is, and is always kept apprised of, the adoption is final now.
And in the story we were talking about, do we know why this woman did not let the father of the baby know that she had the baby until after she had the baby and sent a picture of the baby up just to show him that she did have the baby?
Some said that her parents
didn't like him because he didn't have a job and he was black.
Right.
But that's still, she could have told him.
Yeah, she could have. And it's interesting he won the case, by the way.
Yeah.
But why did he win the case? He was able to prove that she deceived him because he had a series of texts from her, saying, "Here's the baby bump," and blah blah blah. By the way, the reason that he registered for this, that the sister told him to register, was because the mother failed to show up at her own baby shower. So that was a red flag.
Yeah, always a problem.
So he won. I have to go back and talk about the letter that the adoptive parents wrote. They pleaded with him to let them keep the daughter, but the way that they tried to convince him was, "We'll send her to the best schools," which I think felt a little tone deaf on their part. I don't think, again, I
mean, I see what they were doing. They're trying to say, "Look, I will take care of this child and give him a good life."
Right.
But I maybe that's not the place to say it, or the time and place to say it.
Yeah.
When you're trying to.
I think it probably put the nail in the coffin because he's like, "Nope." So he now has full custody of his daughter and is raising her with his sister and his mother and his aunts and
hopefully he got a job.
And hopefully he got a job. So I thought it was really interesting that it is still in this day and age. That's one of the few things where
it's a very thorny situation.
Yeah,
and I said, I find it very upsetting because there's a lot of emotions at stake.
Yeah.
And I feel like the father was wronged. Know. But it's not the fault of the adoptive parents who are trying to do something terrific and give this child a good life. They didn't know.
Yes, that is true. They didn't know. Can I just say one other thing? And
Yes.
I'm speaking as an adoptee, and this is the voices of all the other adoptees behind me.
Please.
Saying that the trope of they did something wonderful for this child by giving this child a home makes it sound like they sacrificed to have this child in their home. And this is not against you at all.
No.
I'm explaining how it sounds to adoptees.
Okay.
The fact is they probably couldn't have their own children. and desperately wanted a child.
Right.
So this child was available.
Right.
And so it's I'm trying to it perpetuates that whole story of the savior that we've talked about before.
I understand what you're saying. And I mean, I guess maybe I could have prefaced it by saying every child deserves to be in a loving home,
right?
And, regardless.
No, and again, this
right.
is I'm not faulting you for saying that at all, because that's what everybody says. But I just wanted to kind of put a flag on that, just to go back to this thing that as adoptees we are constantly having to flip the script and say, wait a minute,
right?
It's not everything is how it appears.
I understand that.
Yeah. So I just wanted to put that out there.
No, and then I flash, as I often do, 2 postcards from the Edge. When the Meryl Streep character says to Shirley MacLaine, or Shirley MacLaine says to her daughter, I wasn't such a bad mother. How would you like to have had Judy Garland or Lana Turner as a mother, or Joan Crawford? And she says, these are my options. You or Lana or Joan.
Family friends.
Yes. So
that's funny. Right. All right, let's take a break.
Thank you for listening to CutOff Jeans with Julie Dixon Jackson and Richard Castle. You can support us by going to patreon.com/CutOff Jeans podcast. Now, back to the program.
All right, it's story time.
Great.
This is part 2 of my conversation with Alicia Valladao.
Those DNA angels are truly, absolutely amazing people. I love them to death because they, within a few days, were able to say, you are definitely a product of these 2 people. They had 5 sons and 2 daughters. So we encourage you to reach out to these people and explain your story and see if they'd be willing to talk to you. So I did that. I went on Facebook and I said a little bit about myself. And then I said, you are either my uncle, my aunt, or my biological father. So if you know any information, please, call me. And I was sitting at work and my aunt Sherry calls me and she's like, so, when were you and your mom in Kansas? And I started laughing and I said, I'm a California girl. Like, I've never been in Kansas in my life. My mom didn't even have her driver's license when I was born.
Uh-huh.
And so she never was in Kansas either. And she said, what, you're in California? And I said, yep. And then she gasped. She's like, I know exactly who your dad is. And I'm like, okay. And she said, yeah, my brother, Mike, went out there for 3 years for work. She's like, this is totally crazy because he's been married and divorced 4 times.
Oh, wow.
And he has no kids that he knows of, like none. And so she said, he is going to flip when I call him and tell him I just spoke to his daughter, Alicia. And I'm thinking, man, this is crazy. Like this lady's already claiming me, like, and
wow.
she's already willing to help me, like, call out, like, her brother is my dad. So we get off the phone and she calls Mike, and then Mike thinks that, that she's pulling a prank on him because he's like, which of my buddies set you up to play a joke on me today, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then he gets home and he sees my Facebook message, and then he wrote me back and he said, the most chilling thing I've ever experienced in my life. He wrote back and he said, looking at your pictures, there is no doubt in my mind that you are my daughter.
Whoa.
Yeah, he said that to me. And I'm thinking, and I got freaked out because, as you know, having done the whole thinking you have a sister thing and then it not working out. Yeah. I was very hesitant and I got a little nervous and I got scared and I said, well, I'm glad that you think that, but I really am going to need the DNA proof because, I'm going to need that. But I'm thankful that you at least see some similarities in us and you see a resemblance. He then said, I'm a little bit in shock. And he said, I need a couple of days to process this, but I'll call you in 2 days. And so then he did call me in 2 days, and that was March 17th, St. Patrick's Day. And we had our very first phone conversation, and we talked for like 4 hours.
Wow.
Yeah. We talked for like 4 hours. We like instantly clicked. It was very just a very unusual experience, something I had never had in my entire life.
So you felt a real connection. Wow.
Yeah, it was weird because like my whole life, I've always felt like I didn't fit in. My whole life, I felt like I just didn't feel, well, there's probably a lot of reasons for that because there's a lot of trauma and just unhealthiness in the family that I was raised in. Mm-hmm. And then to find out later, like it just hurts a whole lot when you find out later that they weren't even your genetic people. But you know, it's just like there's so many things, so many layers that go into this. Like, you know, you're thankful that you had them because you know that the reality is your life could have been so much worse without them. Right. At the same time, you're hurt because you wonder, well, did I feel so alone and such an oddball because you don't understand how I think mm-hmm. and you don't understand how I process my emotions. And I was always made to feel like I was weird. You know?
You could be me right now. All of these things make sense. Yeah.
Yeah. And it was like a very painful realization, you know? It was just kind of like, man, this is a lot to take in. And I was thankful that I found him and thankful that he was so kind and receptive to me because I know so many stories are not like that. Yeah. And then, you know, the fact that right after that phone conversation, he bought a DNA test. And then April 3rd, 2019, the DNA results came back that he was my biological father. And that was a huge blessing and relief to me because I found out just 10 days before turning 31 years old that my dad wasn't my dad. And I was also 4 months away from getting married. And so I was going through wedding planning, going through turning 31, going through.
Oh, it's so stressful.
Yeah. And then finding out that the man that's going to walk me down the aisle is not my dad, not my biological dad. He's always going to be my dad.
Yes.
But not my biological. And then it was just, it was a lot. I actually was like praying to God. I said, God, you know, like when I was searching for my biological father, I couldn't even enjoy wedding planning. Like I could forget wedding planning. Thank God I was an early planner and planned most of it before all this happened.
Right.
I was just so focused on, is there a man out there that looks like me? Like, is there really somebody out there that could still be alive? Like their time is of the essence. Like I've got to find this person to figure out what the heck, who are you? And how did you not know about me? You know, and it was just so many questions. And so I was like, God, please either help me find my biological father quickly or take this desire away from me because it is literally overshadowing any happiness that I should be feeling as I'm about to get married. And like he answered that prayer for me in April. I got my answer and I got married in June. And, you know, I was able to kind of set aside DNA stuff for a moment and just enjoy the moment of getting married. Yeah. And then my husband and I, you know, we already had planned to go to Ireland for our honeymoon. And so we went to Ireland in early July. And then we decided to make a trip to Kansas to meet my biological father together. Okay. And I was really, I was scared, but at the same time, I was like, I need to do this. And so I'm so thankful because there's no way that I would have met him by myself because he's a stranger to me still. You know, even though we had that instant connection, he was a stranger to me. Yeah. Because of all the things I dealt with as a child, I'm very scared of people sometimes. Yeah. And so I didn't want to do that alone. And I'm just so thankful that I had my husband in my life to walk through that with me. And we stayed the whole weekend there and met my biological fathers, my biological aunts, my biological uncles, some cousins, and like his friends. It was just crazy. And like it was like instant connection, though. Like they got my humor. They didn't get offended by me. You're not offended by me.
I get it. I get that.
They just totally got me and they accepted me. They told me they liked me. And I'm like, what is this? It's just I almost felt like I was just too much for my family a lot of the time. And I felt like they didn't understand me. They took offense to every little thing. Yes. And I just for once felt like, man, these people are excited about me. These people like me. These people get me. And it was just a surreal moment.
Yeah, that's great. So So you found your mother's father.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. And so he passed away, but I found my mom's 2 half sisters that are still, well, she's got 3, but 2 that are willing to talk to me.
Okay.
And so that's like another, like layer of this as well, is that like there's a history of NPEs in my family on both my biological father's side and my biological mom's side.
Yeah, I believe that. I think there's a history of NPEs in most families.
Yes.
I think that I'm willing to put money on the fact that if there's a case that I can't solve just because this DNA doesn't make sense, it's because of NPEs.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Huh.
Yeah. So I feel so like complete this year, like 2019 was my year, it was the year that I found out my truth. It was the year that I finally had a full, true family tree.
Yes.
And I got married. And now 2020, my goal is I'm going to finish my memoir because people need to know what this feels like. And I want to walk someone through what it feels like to have your entire world turned upside down. Everything you thought about yourself is re-examined, questioned, no longer true.
Yeah.
And then, not only that, but then if you also add in that there was dysfunction in your family, or origin of your family origin, basically, then this new DNA trauma, because it is a trauma, reopens all those other old traumas that you thought you dealt with or that you thought you had a pretty good control over. It's just like, nope, you didn't.
Yeah. Yeah. It just kind of, it snowballs, doesn't it? It kind of takes all those things that you thought you'd worked through are forefront again. Wow. Yeah. One more question. How is your birth certificate dad? How is that relationship now?
Yeah. So initially, like it bonded us closer because we drew closer in our pain. Yeah. But now things have kind of fizzled back to what they were, like where we love each other, but we don't talk as much. And, there's always been a sort of distance between us. And it's something that I've always tried to be closer. Like my dad, he just was raised in a way where he never could comfortably say, I love you. Mm-hmm. And when I was 18, 19 years old, I started telling my dad, look, I love you. And then he started to say it back to me. And so we have that, but it's very like uncomfortable sometimes for him because he's
forcing himself outside of his comfort zone.
Yeah.
So he's trying. My dad was that way too, I think.
Yeah. And it's so funny because my biological father is like a crybaby. Like, like he's like an emotional person, and I am too. So.
Yeah, I think mine was too. I didn't get to meet mine, but from what I know about him and what my brother has told me, I feel like we're like, definitely the same.
It's interesting because it's like, man, like my biological father, when he was younger, he told me that he had an anger problem and like. But what I see is that he was a very sensitive guy, but for males, it's hard to be allowed in our society to be sensitive. And so you kind of have to overcompensate and become like a fight response. Yeah. And I think I see a lot of that in myself, even as a female growing up in the environment that I did. I've had to learn how to be soft and how to be okay being soft as a woman. But as a man, I just imagine it's even more challenging because you're told it's not okay to be sensitive.
Yeah.
It's not okay to express.
So give me your personal take on the balance of nature versus nurture.
So I have come to the conclusion in my journey that it's, there are so many things that I do get from genetics, like that are just like, it's definite, like I get this from my biological father, no doubt. Like, even something as crazy as like we both have a fear of water and suck at it. Like really. And it's like, what the heck? Like I never met this person in my life and we both are not good at swimming. That's strange, like genetic.
Yeah.
And just in our personalities, being very emotional, our temperaments look very similar. But now what is nature is that I grew up in a family where you were not allowed to really express your emotions openly. You were expected to hold it in, don't talk about it, don't share. If you need to, go talk to God about it and go write in your journal kind of thing. And then it's like, if you want to talk about something, well, it's just not welcome. That taught me to be tough, to fight or to hold it in kind of thing. So then I have this, like, I have it's almost like 50-50, but in some ways I've also noticed that I am a lot like the grandma that raised me, and I'm a lot like the dad that raised me, because I was trying so very hard to be loved.
Mm-hmm.
So it's now I'm in this process as I'm writing my memoir. I'm in this process of like sifting through all that and learning what is good to keep from those relationships and what I need to learn to heal from and let go of, and learn that, you know what, I understand the origin of where this is coming from, and I'm not welcoming this into my life.
The origins is so important in that respect, isn't it?
Yeah.
I feel like I know what my downfalls are and my, my flaws. But I also know why I think that way, even though it doesn't really make sense.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I can totally pinpoint it. And in my husband, so I've been married now 7 months, and, having a trauma like this happen before marriage too, like not only like getting married in and of itself is kind of hard, but going through this and then you're processing all this stuff, it really does takes an impact on your marriage.
Yeah.
And my husband has noticed that as I'm delving into this healing journey and writing my story out, that he's seeing that certain things I don't like about myself, certain ways that I responded to him that I view as, negative or abusive even. He's like, you're not doing those things as much because you're recognizing that that's not who you are. That's a symptom. That's a symptom of abuse. That's a symptom of trauma that you experienced. And that's what you learned. You learned how to react that way, but that's not that's not my personality. That's not who I am. And it's just a symptom. And so once I can see that, then I can say, like, I'm not doing that anymore. And it's a process. Like, I'm not saying I'm perfect all the time. Like, we'll screw up, because it's what you learned, but I'm able to be stronger and more in control of who I become and who I am. Mm-hmm. Once I know my truth, once I know my origins, once I understand why I do what I do.
That's really powerful, Alicia.
Thank you. Like, I'm very passionate about this, because it's definitely been put on my heart, and I almost feel like I feel called to share my story. I feel called to write the story out, because I'm not alone. Unfortunately, like, a lot of people go through this. A lot of people are finding out that they're NPEs. A lot of people are going to continue to find out that they're NPEs. And I don't want them to feel like they're crazy. I don't want them to feel like they're alone. It's a very arduous process. It's going to take you through more than you can really understand unless you walk through it. And that's why I'm passionate about writing my memoir, because I want people to read this. And if they've never experienced this, I'd want them to have compassion and empathy for somebody who is going through it.
Yes. So that they don't say, get over it. Right.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, Alicia, I'm going to let you go. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Have a great day.
All right. Thank you, Alicia, for that.
Thank you, Alicia.
Great
Appreciate
story.
it. Very good story.
I want to read her book. I always say that, and I don't have time to read.
Well,
I am inspired to read her book.
If I spent as much time reading books as I do reading like the paper online or the news and all that stuff, I would be so well read.
I would be a genius.
Because, when I think about it, I used to read so many books when I was younger.
Me too.
But that was all before the advent of the internet. And you could sit home and what am I going to do? Either going to watch TV or I'm going to read.
And we were so calm back then, too.
I am Richard Castle, in case you were wondering. I want the
Thank
world
God
to
you're
know.
telling me.
And I have a website, richardcastle.com, which you may visit if you'd like. Or you could follow me on the Twitter @CastleSongs.
I am Julie Dixon Jackson. I am on the Twitter @JulesJackson with 2 O's. The podcast is on the Twitter, CutOff Jeans Pod, and we have a Facebook group, CutOff Jeans Podcast. There's also, if you are a Patreon or a patron, we have our special CutOff Jeans patron only group that you have to find. I did put a link to it on the page.
Yes.
On the regular page.
Yes. And they all get the patrons get the episodes early.
They get them early,
and they get access to your blog,
and
right?
they get the senior Gin Genies get access to the blog.
That's right.
I also have still not done the first AMA. I'm so bad about it, but I'm going to do it. I'm going to do one in the next couple of weeks. So now that I have 20 people in there, I might get some people in there. So
yeah, that's a great idea.
Reason to do it.
Why not?
That's the story. All right. So
Julie,
that's it.
Where is my truth?
I don't know about yours, but the truth is in my genes.